Today on the show, baseball teaches humility that apparently many of our politicians in America do not have. Maybe they should go back to Little League. Certainly feels that way.
Can't you see? Everyone! They're here already! You're next!
Let's go!
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born!
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
My friend told me he was off to see his kid's baseball game the other day. I say kid, young man, really. I think he's like 15 years old now. And his son pitches on his baseball team. And I was like, hey, how'd it go last time? And he's like, yeah, he had a rough one. And he grimaced that grimace that those of us that have been up on the mound and had to go south can relate to. It's an interesting thing about baseball. If I ever have a kid, I want them to play baseball. Or softball. Or, baseball if they're a girl. I don't know. Who knows? But there's something about that discipline that teaches you something very important. There's something about baseball that really builds character in a way that not too many other things I can think of do. You can play at an amateur level, you can play at a little league level, you can play at any level. But at some point, if you are in any way, shape, or form playing to win, you will learn a lesson or two. There is absolutely no escaping it. Which is why my buddy grimaced that grimace that one does when they've had the experience of being up on the mound dying a death. That's the thing. That's the thing about baseball. It teaches two very different things. It teaches you how to play as part of a team. It teaches you responsibility to the people that are on that team. It teaches you how to work as a team with them. But it also teaches personal responsibility in a way that some other sports don't, I don't think. I don't have a ton of experience playing a ton of different sports, but I played rugby and I played baseball. And in rugby, I kind of felt like I was part of this amorphous mass executing a plan. And that was kind of fun. Working as a team is great. But it's that personal responsibility that baseball teaches. And that acceptance of loss that baseball teaches. The idea that Babe Ruth could be the home run king and the strikeout king is quite a lesson. I think stand-up comedians have the same sort of discipline when it comes to accepting their failures. Most of my friends who are successful professional stand-up comics will tell me that 75% of the time they're on stage, they're bombing. They spend a lot of time sucking, getting good. And they still go out on stage and die routinely. So the humility of loss is an important lesson that you learn from baseball. And I winced as my friend told me the story of his kid having a rough game on the mound. Because that thing happened to me as well. I think one of the single most important lessons I ever learned was pitching against this other team. Man, I'll never forget it. I will never forget it as long as I lived. I wasn't a great pitcher. I didn't play that late in life. But you don't have to be that old to learn this lesson. I had some good games. I had some games where I threw the heat. I had some games where people were like, hey, this kid could really be something. And I kind of sort of remember those. But the one I really remember was this game where I was the only pitcher, and I couldn't get it anywhere near the plate. Don't know what it was, don't know what the convergence of circumstances was, but I was just not even able to throw a strike. I was walking batters left, right, and center, and finally the catcher came out to give me a little pep talk. He was like, okay, man, here's what you got to do. They think you're just going to walk them, so they're not even trying. All you have to do is throw the ball over the plate, and we've got them. And I was like, what do you think I'm trying to do? Not trying to send it to the backstop every freaking time. Thanks for the great advice. But I dug down deep. I summoned all the focus that I've been lacking. I realized that no one was getting me out of this game other than me. And with everything I had, dead inside, my arm dead, I threw my best fastball right over the plate. Beautiful, a thing of beauty. And the batter reached back, kicked his front foot down, and there was a crack like the heavens opening as he hit a grand slam. Now this story is a lot longer, but I was getting beat up, and then finally I've managed to get one over the plate, and that was all she wrote. And I remember in that moment, as much as my catcher tried to console me and say, hey man, all you got to do is throw a strike, I remember thinking, it's just me. I'm 100% responsible for this. Nobody else but me can pitch. There wasn't another pitcher to pitch the game. That was it. It was me. I was going to win or lose on my own merits. And I lost. I lost badly. And out of all the memories I have playing baseball, some of them really fond, some of them exciting, some of them with heroic strikeouts, game-winning double plays, and all the things that make baseball great. The one I remember the most clearly, and the one I remember treasuring the most, it took a while, but the further I got from it, the more I treasured it, is the one of losing. Because it taught me something. Sometimes it's just you. Sometimes you're by yourself. Sometimes you're out there on your own, and you're going to win or lose on your own merits. And there's no one that can change that, and no one that can bail you out. So you just gotta bear down and do it, whatever it is. The wins, the loss, it all comes down to you. Something I don't think our politicians have quite gotten the hang of. I'll tell you why next.
Real radio.
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
So like you and I were talking about, my friend has a teenage kid. That teenage kid pitches on his baseball team. And I asked him how his game was. He said, not good. He had a rough go of it. And he winced that wince that let me know that at one point or another, he'd been up on the mound and he'd had a rough go of it. The same way I had. And look, it's not just the position of pitcher that teaches you the pain of loss and the personal responsibility that baseball teaches, but it's a pretty intense version of that. And as I look back on it, the most valuable memory I have of playing baseball growing up, no, it wasn't the wins. It wasn't the heroic game-winning double plays. It wasn't the times that I struck people out. The experience that made far and away the biggest impression on me as a kid playing baseball was that one miserable game where, for whatever reason, I couldn't get the ball over the plate to save my life. My arm felt like Jell-O or lead or a combination of the two things. Couldn't get the ball anywhere near the plate. And finally, the catcher, the suffering catcher who'd been chasing him to the backstop, left, right, and center, walked up to me and said, hey, this is what you do. All you got to do is throw it over the plate because they think you're going to walk each and every one of them. So if you just throw a strike, we can get out of this. And like I was saying earlier, I was like, what do you think I'm trying to do? Not trying to send it to the backstop every freaking time, but okay, I'll try and throw a strike. So I focused in a bases loaded situation. Every ounce of energy I had went into this one brilliant, probably for me, personal record-setting pitch. I mean, this was going to make a crack like thunder when it hit that catcher's mitt. I very much doubted that my long-suffering catcher was going to be able to hold on to it. I mean, I brought the heat, and not only that, it was a perfect strike. Perfect. Just kind of painted the outside of the plate. And there was no way he was getting anywhere near this one. Not coming in that hot, not coming in that far outside to where you questioned whether or not it was a breaking ball or a fastball. I mean, I whipped that thing right down the pike. And I remember it like it was slow motion yesterday. This kid, who was probably my age, I don't know, 14, 15 at the time, he kind of reared back. His front foot lifted up, came down, and there was a crack like thunder as he hit a grand slam. And that pain of defeat, that pain of loss, that pain of, oh my God, now what? Well, I don't remember what, but I remember that I suffered out there and I got through it. I mean, let's be clear here. I don't think my team won, but it was just that inning that stays fixed in my mind. The thrashing I took at the hands of the opposing team and my own mind was something that stayed with me forever. But I value it so much. I value it so much more than the wins because it was at that moment that I realized as a kid that there were going to be occasions where no one could bail me out. And whether I was going to win or lose or succeed or fail was 100% down to me. That's the beautiful thing about baseball. Teaches you how to play as part of a team. Teaches you how to pick your teammates up. Teaches you to pick your teammate up when that teammate needs it. But it also teaches you a level of personal responsibility that I think is unique in the world of sports. And that stayed with me. There's some things that nobody can do for you. You want to get in shape? Guess what? No one is going to eat the right things and do the exercise. That's down to you. Your life, your career, how things go. You might have situations where you have teammates or have to rely on people, or you might be put in unfair situations, but ultimately, it's down to you. Baseball, among other things, teaches us this very important lesson. A lesson that, well, makes me feel like Hillary Clinton never went out for softball. No, this is not picking holes in the left or the right. But the fact that someone that can be considered a leader in America and speaks like this gives me cause for pause. If you ask me, not setting an exceptionally good example. During an Evening with the Clintons event in LA, Hillary said that she is advising candidates about what it's like to have an election stolen. Here, check this out.
Keep your eye on the whole landscape as it is moving forward. And I think it's also critical to understand that, as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, You can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you. And that, my friends, has nothing to do with the economy, does it?
No.
I think the thing that bothers me the most is the applause. The election was stolen from me. Look, I'm not here to debate Donald Trump, Russian collusion, and all of these things. That's a path to nowhere. But this narrative that, oh, boo-hoo, I was so hard done by. I don't care if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican. This is not a good example. It's not a good example to set. It was stolen? Maybe there was that thing where you stood for president as opposed to ran for president. Maybe there was that thing where you completely ignored large chunks of the Midwest where people felt forgotten. Made them feel even more forgotten when you didn't go visit them and say, hey, this is how I recognize what's going on in your life. And as someone that's asking for your vote to be president of these United States of America and leader of the free world, this is how I'm going to recognize what is going on in your life and how I'm going to attempt to make change, palpable change in your life. Saying it was stolen from me doesn't really take into account the number of people that were so roundly alienated as voters when the perception was you kind of stole the nomination from one B. Sanders. Bottom line is, you can argue Russian collusion, you can argue ignoring chunks of the Midwest, you can argue a rift in the Democratic Party thanks to what went down with Bernie. But at the end of the day, that was a pretty close election. And had just a couple things gone a little bit differently, we could have a completely different person in the White House right now. She was not in an impossible situation. She was in a tight race that she lost, maybe because she didn't do everything that she could have done to win it. Whatever the case may be, it sets a hideously poor example for the people of America, youth of America, saying, yeah, well, I had the best campaign, but it was stolen from me. Trying to create this victimized narrative when you're Hillary Clinton shouldn't work. But what bothers me is that it does seem to be working. You heard the cheers. You heard the applause when she said, oh, it was stolen from me. Did you do everything you could have to win? No, you didn't. Did you lose? Yeah. Was it a close race? It was. Being an American and attempting to play the victim is folly on a global scale. And as much as people like this want to set this kind of an example, we cannot fall victim to it. We cannot fall victim to the desire to play the victim, because that will lead you, me, all of us, collectively, to nowhere.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950, Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radioland. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, bring this on.
Oh man, did you watch this past weekend just gone by? Adam Sandler was on it. Man, he did such a great job. If you are like me, far and away the best part of it, though, was when he came back on Weekend Update and was Opera Man after, 24 years or something like that?
Game
is almost finito, although exciting, edge up Paisito. We can't wait for final show, so we can cancel our HBO.
And oh man, all of Saturday Night Live, including Adam Sandler and including the folks on Weekend Update, went in on Joe Biden. Like, kind of sort of the liberal battle line has been officially drawn by the folks over at Saturday Night Live. They do not appear to be Biden fans.
Kamala, Gillibrand, Klobuchar, Warren, they have slim chance, so they know where pants are. Corey, Pete, and Beto will have to wait, oh. Here we go again, 70-year-old man. Yes. Tropa, sniffer, young or older, make no differ. Joe for this you, a one for Faro. To win White House, you need to bang porn star.
I have to tell you, as much of a number as the folks over at Saturday Night Live did on Joe Biden, he's doing a pretty good number on himself. Look, he has very definite opposition within the Democratic Party. There are people that say he is entirely too white, too old, too privileged, too male to be a representative for the Democratic Party. This is not his time. It's been old white dudes for entirely too long, and, well, it's time for something different. And did you see what he said? Did you see what he did this past, I think it was this weekend, where he bragged about how women of color from the hood were taught to code under his watch. He was speaking at a rally. Former Vice President Joe Biden elaborated on how U.S. workers needed to receive better education to prepare themselves for a changing economy. He told the crowd, through a program we had through community colleges, we can teach people how to code. What the hell? Let me just play it for you.
So what we do, we went out and got an organization. If you're a business person and you want to get a tech person, you go to this particular organization. We said, come in and find us people who can do this job. And through a program we had through community colleges, we said, look, put together a program for us where we can teach people how to code. So they went out literally into the hood, and they turned out 54, they had to be all women, the vast majority were women of color, no one with more than a high school degree, ages 24 to 54, and almost a third of them only had a GED.
Hear that? They went to the hood and found women of color with GEDs. It's just, he's making it too easy for his own opposition within the Democratic Party. Going to the hood. I'm Mixmaster Joey B, and I want you to know I'm a business mofo. We are going into the hood. We are getting women of color and with GEDs and teaching them how to code. What is what he might as well have said. The folks over at the Washington Examiner reported that Biden's use of the word hood drew nervous laughter from the crowd. One person let out a noticeable yikes. And you know what? It's kind of a bummer, this infighting that's going on. I mean, on the left, on the right, but, most pronouncedly, is that a word? It is now. On the left. Because, let's be real here. There's not too many never-Trumpers left. All the never-Trumpers were like, Trump's voting record is surprisingly conservative for someone who is a Democrat till about a minute and a half before he decided to run. We're okay with this. He tweets and says and does embarrassing things, but in terms of policy, he's sort of towing the company line. Yeah, I think we're just going to let that one slide. It's good to have your guy at the top of the heap. We're not going to challenge him. When Donald Trump was first elected, there was all this talk that there was going to be challenging from within his own party, and the rumblings of that are really just barely even a blip on the radar. But on the left, super freaking divided as people engage in their civil war for a nomination. And what's sad is, look, the left has already started jumping all over what Joe Biden said by saying that we went into the hood and found women of color and taught them how to code, even though they only had GEDs. But he raises an interesting point, something that you and I have been talking about on this show a lot. A college education is a wonderful, amazing, awesome thing. I wish every single one of us could have one. I wish we could all learn that there is joy in learning. I wish we could go for the mind-expanding experience that was a 4-year education, possibly some post-grad work. But that's gotten to be so mind-numbingly expensive and so cost-prohibitive and so, in its own way, stupid that a lot of people are starting to let go of the idea of a traditional degree being necessary to go out and get a job. Like for a while, do they have a degree? Nah, yeah, we're giving it to someone with a degree. But they're eminently qualified in every single way, but they're just missing a couple of PE credits. Well, the person with a degree got it. Now, there are very specific skills. If you know how to code, they don't care if you went to PE class. If you know how to code, they don't care how your spelling and grammar is. If you know how to code, they don't really mind whether or not you're familiar with the work of P.G. Wodehouse and Chaucer and Canterbury Tales and Shakespeare. They don't care if you are proficient in other languages. They care about the coding language. And as universities have gotten more and more prohibitively expensive, as jobs fail to pay enough to really pay back your student loans in any kind of a timely fashion, stuff like exactly what Biden was talking about has become the wave of the future, but it's just getting lost. His own folks are jumping all over him, and man, it is entertaining, but it's also kind of ugly. And it's also obscuring some pretty good stuff, which is a shame. America's greatest failing is now, maybe always has been, the inability that we have to truly unite and be the United States of America and recognize that we are all on the same side. You know who loves it when we fight with each other? The Kim Jongs, the Putins of this world. They freaking love it when we are busy squabbling with one another. We don't notice what they're up to. When we are at each other's throats, they are winning. And it feels like they've been winning a lot of late. But yeah. Joe Biden. Interesting stuff. Moments of high comedy coming from the Joe Biden campaign, and even higher comedy coming from his detractors within his own faction. Who will, let's be real here, if things play out the way we're expecting they play out, probably get on side when he eventually secures a nomination. I think when I last checked, Bernie was ahead. Bernie was ahead, and I think it was Biden coming in right behind him. And then the rest of the clown car that is the field of potential Democratic nominees. And I'm not dismissing any of them by saying that they're clowns. I'm just saying that there's an awful lot of them. It's a large and unwieldy group that's hard to keep track of. And the brand familiarity that Bernie and Biden have will, I think, probably whittle it down to the two of them. But you know what? Who's to say? Who knows? It's interesting to see how it all plays out. But mark my words on this. As they do everything they can to tear down Bernie and Biden for being 70-year-old white dudes with a bunch of money in the bank. And they will, and they have been. If one of them snags a nomination, all that will go out the window. And I bring this up not to tell you anything you don't know already, but to just remind you that as this mudslinging starts, and starts in earnest around our election, it's useful to remember that it's all just for show. This is a show. This attempt to pit us against one another is a diversion. It's part of a farcical comedy, and we cannot take it too seriously. And we definitely cannot allow it to cause us to forget that we are, as I say always on this show, on the same freaking side.
To get washed away. Radio. Real Radio. 104.1.
Now, more AD on the radio.
Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you my musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me. Back once again, the ill behavior, delivering and giving you a musical savior. Back once again, it's your boy AD, and can't nobody rock a body better than me.
Alrighty then, before you and I get out of here today, let's take a little look at the events of today in our segment, My Witness News. What is going on in the world? So if you are like a lot of people I know, you are planning on heading to the beach this summertime. Here's the thing though, you might want to avoid beaches in the incredibly beautiful Pacific Northwest. Why? Well, because terrifying things keep happening up there. And it's nothing to do with sharks. Have you heard about this? It has to do with body parts. Human body parts floating ashore. Yeah. Which body part and why? Well, this is where it gets super creepy. 15 dismembered human feet have washed ashore on the same Jetty Island beach in Everett, Washington in the last decade. Yeah, 15 dismembered human feet have washed ashore on this beach in Everett, Washington over the last 10 years. Why? Well, like I said, this is where it gets unbelievably creepy. Officials don't know why. Officials aren't sure why these dismembered human feet are washing ashore in Washington. They can't figure out where the dismembered feet are coming from. For the record, I would like some credit for avoiding the temptation to say that they're stumped. Hey, so did you hear which unusual meat people in Australia have been eating more and more of? You and I have been talking about this over the last couple of months. As the summer grilling season approaches, we've been talking about exotic foods that people are putting on their grill these days. And, well, this is an interesting one. I'm curious to know if you could put this in your mouth. People in Australia, like I said, have been eating more and more of this stuff. To most of us here in America, this is pretty much unfreaking thinkable. This is an animal that we go to the zoo to marvel at. But there, the Australian government is actually urging people to hunt and eat this animal to help the environment. What is it? The kangaroo. Yeah, Australians are being told by the Australian government to hunt and eat more kangaroos because the kangaroo population in Australia has apparently doubled. And they're actually doing some serious damage to their habitat by overrunning it. So, like I said, there's a lot of kangaroo burgers on the grill, on the barbie in Australia. Now, even though it is sort of a move that is pro-conservation in Australia, it has Australian animal rights activists hopping mad. Ooh, can you imagine this? You are a new mom, and you've just given birth. When the woman that helped you deliver your baby reveals that she and your husband have been keeping a horrible secret from you. This actually happened to one new mom recently in Liverpool in England. A midwife in Liverpool delivered a baby for this woman and then revealed to the mother of the child that day, the same day that the kid was born, that she had to unburden herself. She had to tell her the truth. She had to come clean. She'd been sleeping with her husband. Yeah. Midwife admitted to the woman whose baby she just delivered that she'd been banging her husband. Needless to say, they're going through a horrible divorce right now. Nasty, messy, awful divorce. I guess you could say the husband had a midwife crisis. So if you are like a lot of people I know, like we said before, you're looking forward to hitting the beach this summertime. You're looking forward to getting in the water, surfing, paddleboarding, jet skiing, whatever the case may be. Whatever you like to get up to in the old H2O. Here's the thing though. Because of migratory and feeding patterns, there have been increased numbers of shark attacks over the last couple of years at American beaches. And if this worries you, you might be interested to know what one company has done about it. Yeah, if you're concerned about sharks, this could be for you. In preparation for the summer surfing season, A company has developed this device that will be able to help people at the beach avoid sharks and shark attacks. What it does is this. It uses sonar to detect the swimming pattern and size of fish near beaches. Yeah, a device that helps you avoid sharks. I have a device that helps me avoid sharks. It's called Land. Ooh. Oh, this is good. Did you hear which disgraced politician can't get his autobiography published? Yeah. This is far and away one of the most recognizable names in the world of politics over the last decade. And yet, well, it seems like every time any politician spends any time in office, it's really just a protracted book tour. This guy, this unbelievably notorious guy, can't find anybody who wants to put out his tell-all book. We are, of course, talking about disgraced Congressman Anthony Weiner, who was, of course, publicly humiliated after it came to light that during his marriage he had been sexting with random women on the internet and sending them pictures of his junk. Yeah, Anthony Weiner can't find a publisher for his memoirs. Maybe if he wasn't so determined to make it a pop-up book. I'm sure he's confident that his book would be a bestseller. So, you know how one of America's biggest exports, biggest businesses of all time, is the Golden Arches. Not only is McDonald's huge here in America, it's huge all over the world. Case in point, my father, who lives and works in Kosovo, of all places. My father told me that when the first McDonald's opened up in Kosovo, former war-torn Yugoslavia, serving, I kid you not, a cabbage burger. When the first McDonald's opened up in Kosovo, lines were around the block for days. Countries all over the globe love the taste of Americana that is Mickey D's, who do 100 million%, as much as I am loath to admit it, have the best French fries. But there is one country where McDonald's has failed and failed miserably and has had to close hundreds of locations recently. Yeah. Where was it? Which country do you suppose? And why? Well, as it turns out, McDonald's has been forced to close hundreds of locations in India. Why? Why do you suppose that is? Well, for future reference, if you are a hamburger restaurant, maybe, I'll just throw this out there, maybe don't open up a location in a country where cows are sacred. Did you hear about this great-grandmother that recently broke a skydiving record? Yeah, she's a great-grandma, broke a skydiving world record. Her name's Irene O'Shea. She's 102. She's a grandmother of 5 and a great-grandmother of 11. A couple years ago, she celebrated her 100th birthday with a record-breaking 1,200-foot jump skydiving, and now a couple years later, she's broken the Guinness World Record by becoming the oldest skydiver ever at 102 years old. Now, 102-year-old skydiving sounds risky to you and I, but you have to bear in mind that in some ways, a 102-year-old is probably safer than the rest of us jumping out of a plane. I mean, when you think about it, if the parachute fails, she can always glide safely and softly to the ground on her excess arm skin. All right. That is it for me. Thank you so much for hanging. Thank you for being a part of my radio family. As always, this time that you and I spend together, it's the best part of my day every single day. Have yourself a great and safe night. If you want to join in the conversation, at ADSXE is where you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, or email me, ad@iheartradio.com. Have a great one.